Good evening. This is George Haraz with George's Family Matters Live. Today is Tuesday, January 17th, 2017. Ahead for this week, coming up for tomorrow, which is Wednesday, Adopting a Baby with Carolyn Goodridge, the Foster Adoption Delivery. Then on Thursday, New Baby, New Family, New Worries with Carlos Haraz, The Realities of Parenthood. And on Friday, reading of the book Dismantled, The Family on William Street East, Session 1. That is going to be something that's going to be a series for a while. On Fridays, I will be reading out of the book Dismantled, The Family on William Street East. It's the book by Susie Mitchell Collin that was written about myself and what happened to my family. I think it's important for people to know. I've had a lot of people write in and ask if there's an audio version, and there is not, so we're going to make an audio version available for free. The book is not meant to be out there for anything other than for people to learn from it. I've never read the book, so it'll be very interesting myself to read it and go through it. And tonight we have our words in the wrong order. We have Laurie Landry, licensed marriage and family therapist. Hi, Laurie. Are you there?
I'm here, George.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Lori, later in the show, I have some quotes that I picked out for you. We're going to be talking about the hardest part of being a parent and bringing kids into this world. Tonight's show is A Baby with Lori Landry, Let the Attachment Begin. Um, Anything new in your life, Lori, that you want to share? You're a returning host. People are getting to know you a little bit. I don't think I have to do the big introduction. I think that you, in my mind, are world famous. You're an attachment specialist, and you give really good advice, which a lot of people are going to need.
So, is there anything new in my life?
Yes.
No. Did I tell you about the weather here, George?
What is the weather there? You're in Connecticut.
Yes, it's rainy and cold, and we're getting an ice storm.
Okay, I said you're in Connecticut, so why did you tell me the obvious?
Well, why don't you tell me what the weather's like where you are?
Well, Lori, I'm in Florida, and this morning when I went outside with my shorts and t-shirt on and opened the door, I closed the door and went back in and put socks on with my sandals because I was going to go check the mail and go for a little walk, and I decided that it was a little too chilly to go without socks, so I put on short little sports socks. That's how the weather here is. It was about, I'd
George,
say about 80 today. It was a little bit cooler today.
George, you know how I hate that look.
What look?
When you wear your socks with sandals. Have
I'm,
we not talked about this 1,000 times?
we probably have. I'm just, I guess, not a good listener. Lori, I'm going to
Yes,
leave the socks
George.
and I'm going to go right into questions. So
Okay.
tonight, again, is a new baby with Lori Landry. Let the attachment begin. Now, attachment, we've talked about this, huge. It's not just huge with biological families, it's huge with foster, adoption, it's lifelong for the child. So, my first question to you is what is attachment and what is the process of attachment? Actually, what is attachment? Let's start with that because I think that's big enough in itself.
That's a loaded question, George. Attachment is, I could talk about it forever. It's the process of well, for purposes of our show, I guess, the process of children, babies, bonding to their parents or caregivers. And bonding meaning finding security, safety, love, nurturing, acceptance, all of those things from their parents or caregivers or whoever it is, the adults in their lives that are taking care of them. So I wish I had something in front of me with a proper definition of attachment. There's some really lovely ones that people have come up with, but it's far from my tongue right now. But I wish you had asked me that. Sorry, I'm clearing my throat again.
I understand that we talked about this off the air. Dairy products make you clear your throat, and I
Yes,
understand you
I
eat
eat
ice
ice
cream during
cream
our
when I
show.
talk to you, and
Hmm.
dairy products make me clear my throat.
Then maybe the answer is less dairy products when we're doing the show. Um,
Perhaps, but you know how I feel about snacking.
yes. And snacking
Mm.
actually is a very healthy thing. You should never deprive yourself. Laurie, can attachment be broken in utero before birth even occurs?
It can be damaged, certainly.
How?
So if you're a fetus growing inside a baby, I'm sorry, inside a birth mom, um, and something happens during the process where there's environmental stimuli that's negative, like drugs, if birth mother's using drugs, or if there's domestic violence, or anything that causes the fetus or the mother anxiety. So anything that causes the mother anxiety is going to cause the baby anxiety. And so that interrupts the normal attachment process, because attachment's a lot about safety. And if a fetus does not feel safe, the attachment process gets at least disrupted. So yes, it can affect it really affects anxiety. I'm sorry. Outside negative stimuli affect the baby's anxiety, which interrupts the attachment process.
Okay. And Laurie, I almost forgot something. I'm wearing a pink shirt today. We're going to go to shot of me with my pink shirt on in just 1 second. And I say this because I forgot to tell you and listeners and everyone, Carlos and Carrie are now in the hospital as of 5:30 yesterday. So it's been 24, about 25 and a half hours in the hospital. I can only imagine that she's uncomfortable by now. The baby has not been born yet. I have a way of knowing immediately upon birth of the child. I'm anxiously waiting for Sophia. It's going to be a girl. Her name is going to be Sophia. I'm going to wear pink shirts until the baby's born. I only have one shirt left that's pink, so I hope that she does arrive soon. It's a very exciting time, and it's kind of timely considering that we're talking about um, attachment, and that's going to be a very
George,
important thing.
do you know what the holdup is? What's going on? Why it's taking so long?
Yes, the baby hasn't been born yet. She's not ready. She's showing everybody that she's in control. She's a little on the stubborn
Mm.
side. She's going to do things on her own time, and I think that's fantastic. I think that she should not be pushed into things just because we have a preconceived notion of when she should be born. She's saying, nope, I won't have it. I'll come out when I'm good and ready.
It might be that she's very happy where she is,
You
and
know,
she doesn't want to change it.
that's part of attachment, isn't it?
Well, it's certainly part of life. I imagine being in utero as sort of like a utopia. You don't feel cold, you don't feel heat, you don't, if your mom is doing a good job at taking care of you, then you don't go hungry, and you really don't want for anything. All of your needs are met right there. And
So,
so you really don't have to solve any problems. You don't have to um, act or react, or it's just sort of a utopia experience in good situations.
now I never thought of it that way. It goes along with what you were saying earlier that attachment can be broken if it doesn't go smoothly, but in the case where everything's going smoothly, then what would birth mean to that child? Do you happen to know that? You know, that time when the contractions start, the baby's pushed out, when all that starts to happen, what do you think happens at that point with the baby?
Well, I don't know for sure, and I certainly don't remember
You don't
my own
remember?
birth.
You don't
I do
remember?
not. My mother remembers it well, but I don't remember.
Okay.
And the only thing I can tell you is if you have this wonderful experience in utero, and then one day, particularly in this country, lights, camera, action, you are, pushed through this small canal. Many times there's instruments involved in pulling you out, and hospitals and loud and bright lights when you get out. I can't imagine that it can be pleasant. And in fact, I think it's probably traumatic.
Mm-hmm. Lori,
Which
that.
gets us to, yes.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's okay. What were you going to say?
Okay, so basically, the baby's in a utopia. I agree, as long as everything's going well with mom, and that's a wonderful
Right.
thing. Now the baby's born. It's out in the world. Who starts the attachment process, mother or child?
Both.
In what way?
I think that in perfect circumstances, the mother's natural um, action is to grab the baby and pull the baby close to her and put her on, put the baby on the belly. So if the baby gets put on the belly, the baby can then hear the sounds of the gurgling of the stomach, and the baby can then know that, and then know that that sound is familiar, and then know that they're going to get fed. And so then the baby slowly crawls up and makes its way up to the feeding source, which is the mother's breast, and they suckle on the breast and they get fed, and they smell the mother, hear the mother, even look in the mother's eyes for a short time after a baby is born. And I'm not really sure how long it lasts. A baby can actually recognize the birth mother's eyes.
Oh, that's very interesting. And Laurie,
Hmm.
can the baby do something to make the mom not want to attach?
Not want to?
Yeah, something that would repel the mother, or, does that ever happen? Because, um, we're talking about the mother starts it, and I get it, the baby goes along with things. What happens at birth? Can the baby do something or cause the mother not to want to attach?
I'm not sure. I don't want to speak about something I don't know about.
Okay.
But I would imagine that if the mother, and what I do know about a little bit is, if a mother is placing a baby for adoption, she might not want to attach and bond with the baby, because that's knowing that she's gonna have to give the baby up and
Hmm.
separate from the baby. She might not want to start the process at all.
Do you think that's harmful?
I think it's harmful for the baby, sure.
Do you think the baby would sense it that it's taken from its mother right at birth and not bonding?
Absolutely, absolutely, because all that baby knows is the senses of the mother, the smells, the sound, the taste, the feeling of the mother. And so if that all of that is taken away, that's a separation. And the
S-
baby would be able to sense that.
So are we born with those senses that we're looking for those things, kind of like, I hate to say wild animal, but turtles, they immediately go for the ocean. Do babies immediately know what to look for?
Yeah, it's part of survival.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and
So obviously the human infant needs human assistance to get all that done.
mm-hmm.
But the natural instinct is for the baby to suckle from the breast and to smell the mother and to feel the mother's touch and to hear the voice of the mother. All of the familiar senses that the baby,
Mm-hmm.
which I believe heals the trauma of the birth.
Okay. And Lori, what should a birth mother do at time of birth to start the attachment? You mentioned putting the baby on her stomach and letting the baby make its way to the milk, but what else should she be doing?
I think hold the baby as soon as possible, cuddle the baby, keep the baby as close to her skin as possible, talk to the baby. I think it all comes rather naturally in most cases.
Are there some mothers that it's not natural?
I suppose.
And what should a mother who's giving her baby up for adoption do with the baby? What would be the best thing for the baby? Even though that bond is going to be broken, she's going to be giving it up for adoption. What should she do before, or once the baby's born,
Well,
before she gives it
it
up?
seems to me she should do what continue with the natural process, so that the trauma from the birth can be healed, and the baby can have the birth mother for the healing process of the birth. And in the cases of adoption, I think it's probably best practice to slowly introduce adoptive family,
Hmm.
gradually introduce the adoptive family.
So you shouldn't take a baby in ideal world. You shouldn't take the baby from the womb and give it to the adoptive mother.
I don't think so.
Okay. So you said something extremely interesting to me, anyways. You said that birth is trauma. I kind of get that because you're taken out of what you said is the utopia place that you just kind of hang out and have a really good time, that you don't have any worries. Then all of a sudden you have a huge disruption for the first time in your entire life where everything's turned upside down. So that's trauma.
Yes.
And then being with the mother, soothing mother that's holding the baby, reassuring it, giving it milk, um,
Hmm. It
basically.
brings the baby back. It brings the baby back to homeostasis and back to the familiarity of the mother, which heals the trauma, I believe.
Okay. And then a mother that's planning on giving the baby up should still do those attachment things to help the baby get through the trauma of birth itself.
Yes.
Does it make it harder for the baby if they're starting to attach to the mother and now, 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, whatever it is, the baby's now given to, and I know it doesn't work that they just hand it to the adoptive mother, but in that situation, the hospital takes the baby, puts it into nursery, and the adoptive mother comes to meet and all that stuff. Isn't that still breaking that attachment now?
Well, eventually the attachment's going to be broken in the case of adoption.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to prevent that.
So what
It's
does the
just a matter
adoptive
of,
mother do? The adoptive mother on the other end now, she's getting this baby, and let's say it did have those, exercises, if you will, 10, 15, 20 minutes or whatever it is, the mother holding the baby, feeding the baby, and now the birth mother says, okay, I can't do anymore. I want the baby to go to the adoptive mother. What should the adoptive mother be doing to help this baby to attach?
whatever comes natural. Hold the baby, look in the baby, get the baby familiar with her sound and her voice and her eyes, and um, and try to get the baby as familiar with her as a place of safety or a person of safety as much as possible.
And Laurie,
So
breastfeeding. How important is that?
I know nothing about that, George.
Well, you must know something about it. How important is it for the baby? Have you ever done No, you have not done breastfeeding because you adopted.
No, my children are adopted. Yes.
Well, that's actually going to come right into my question because the first part of my question is how important is breastfeeding to a baby, even if it's going to be given up for adoption?
Um, I think initially it's important so the baby can, have the breast milk and have the familiar taste and the familiar all of the what we've talked about in the past. I hear what I read, and I think common knowledge is breastfeeding is really good for the baby in terms of nutrition, uh, and it's a wonderful opportunity to procure, if you will, the attachment process and keep it ongoing. Because when you think about the baby on the breast, the mother's looking at the baby, looking in the eyes, looking at the face, talking to the baby while breastfeeding. It's a wonderful way to stimulate attachment. So I think it's all good. I know some women that I know have found breastfeeding difficult. It can be painful. It can be stressful. Um, but I think it's important. I don't think it's mandatory. I mean, I wasn't breastfed. Were you?
I don't remember. I don't know. I'm assuming not because my little brother was not breastfed, and I think back in the 80s when I was born that breastfeeding. Okay, I was born in the 60s. Back in the 60s, I don't think moms were doing that. I think that they thought that the formula was actually a healthier way. Lori,
Mm-hmm.
for the adoptive mother that cannot do the breastfeeding, obviously, because her body did not make milk for the baby, because her body was not expecting a baby, what can she do?
Well, she can feed the baby and be very attentive while bottle feeding her child. So, in other words, paying attention to the child when she's feeding, not watching TV or reading or, sleeping or, you know, but as if the baby was suckling from her breast, feed the baby with the bottle and do all the other things that go along with it.
Mm-hmm. Lori, I want to point something out. I'm not the person being interviewed, but I get to throw things in from time to time. When I raised my kids, I made sure absolutely every single meal that we had, we were together. I thought that was a huge part of attachment. And I think it starts, as you're pointing out, from a very young age, right when the baby's born. I think it's that important. Would you agree that it's always important to be having food with your children if you can?
I think mealtime, for many reasons, is a very important family ritual throughout the lifespan.
Give me some examples. What kind of reasons?
It forces families to be together. It stimulates conversation. Um, it takes the attention away from other things, television, homework, whatever else the family has going on. It's just a really good family ritual.
Mm-hmm. Laurie, I'm going to share something with everybody real quick. We've had a lot of technical problems on George's Family Matters Live with computers. There's just so much equipment. There's so many things that can go wrong. And there is one computer that keeps giving us problems, and I just don't have the funds at this point to replace it. It would cost about 900 to get the kind of computer that I need, close to 1,000. So basically, it's not going to happen right now. So we've always have had problems with our phones, and with that, I want to put our phone number up there. Oh, no, I'm not going to put that phone number up there because it's the wrong one. Let's. I'll fix that. In a second, while you're answering the next question, I'm going to fix the phone number, Laurie, that I can't believe is the wrong number. But I do want to encourage people to call in with any questions during the show, and you can start calling anytime you like, even now, especially new mothers. I'd like to hear from new mothers that have questions, grandparents that want to help their grandchildren, and of course their children to raise kids properly, to call and ask questions. Anybody. That's the whole purpose of our show, is to help people out. So let us help. Give a call. Our number is 202 999 4699. I'm going to have that number up there in a second, and it'll be the right number this time. Laurie, is attachment a thing we should worry about, or is it only an issue if there's a broken attachment? So, should a new mom even be worried about it?
Say that again, George?
Yes. Is attachment a thing we should worry about? So, attachment in general, should people be thinking about this upon birth of a child? Or should we only worry about it if there's a problem, like we adopt a child or something along those lines where there's a broken attachment? Maybe the baby stays in the hospital a few days longer than the mom, and there's issues because of that. Should we worry about attachment or only if it's a
I don't
problem?
think I don't think you should worry about it. I think it's fairly a natural thing that happens between human beings. So I don't think you really need to worry about it. I think it's like all things in parenting, it's something to pay attention to, but I don't think you need to worry about it. I think in most cases, parents do a fine job at attaching. It just happens naturally.
Okay.
So no, I don't. In the case of adopted children, yes, I think parents need to be a little bit more attentive to that process because it does take a little bit extra work.
Mm-hmm. And
So, um,
but they should be aware that attachment exists, or the attachment process needs to develop. You would agree on that. They should need to be aware of the attachment process just so they're aware how important it is that when they're feeding the baby, it's eye contact, it's goo goo gaga to
mm-hmm.
the baby, and those kinds of
Yes,
things. Okay.
it's mimicking what the baby's doing. So, you've probably seen in the grocery store, moms who have the babies in the carriages in the grocery store. The baby makes a sound, the mother makes the same sound. The baby makes a funny face, the mother makes the same funny face. The baby smiles, the mother smiles back. So it's that reciprocal interaction, mimicking the baby. And eventually the baby will start to mimic you, or mimic the mom or dad or the adult caregiver, even the siblings.
Laurie, not to jump onto a different subject, but it's in the same line. Isn't that very similar to in dating, where you mirror the person's behaviors? If they're using a dinner napkin and they put it on their lap, you put the dinner napkin on your lap. And if you both have that ritual, so to speak, then there's attachment. Isn't that kind of the same kind of thing?
Oh, I try not to mimic anybody that I'm dating, George. That's very bad practice.
Well, I don't mean mimic on purpose, but there's subconscious things that you're doing that sends the person the message um, that we have things in common, and that's an
Yes, I
attachment. It
think
makes
that
you
in
want to
all love,
attach.
right, I think in all love relationships, there's a secret language. So there's certain words that I use with my children, that nobody else in the world would understand. there's certain sentences that we have found funny over the years that I can just throw out to my kids, and nobody else in the world would that make sense to, but to us it does. And I think that happens in all love relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And that is attaching. That is bonding and attaching.
Now that brings me into our next question. I've heard this before. I've read articles about this. I've read a lot of stuff actually about attachment. I'm no expert like you, but um, is there truth to your first boyfriend girlfriend experience is with your parents? And how would that
Um,
work? How would you see that
I
working?
think sometimes, again, we look for things that are familiar to us. So, um,
Well,
so,
a little boy gives his mother flowers, and she makes a big
mhm,
deal about it. Encourages
mhm,
him to want to give flowers in the future to somebody that he loves, correct?
sure.
Okay.
Yes, I would think so.
And what does developmental attachment look like?
Developmental attachment. You mean attachment over the lifespan?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it looks very similar to the infant caregiver attachment. So, um, I think depending on the quality of our attachment early on, this, um, it sort of sets the blueprint for our attachment processes through the lifespan. How we attach to individuals, who we choose for a mate, how we parent our own children. So it goes on through the lifespan. How we teach our children to attach, how we teach our children to parent. So our attachment quality from the beginning carries us over through all of our relationships in our lifetime.
Okay. And Lori, children that misbehave or are fresh to the parents, do they have attachment issues?
No,
What is that? When kids misbehave and they're fresh to their parents, what would you categorize that as?
normal,
Just normal
normal,
growing up.
normal human behavior. Yes,
What are they learning from that?
what not to do.
Words, you're fresh, you don't listen. Doesn't that send some kind of a message as well?
Sure, it's parents. I think in all kinds of different ways, depending on the parenting techniques, send messages to their children that they don't like certain behaviors and they don't want to be around kids who are behaving in a certain way. So it's teaching positive behavior. So I think it's difficult for parents who don't have attached children to model and teach good behavior because children are the way that children are made is they want to please their parents. And so they're motivated, children are motivated to make their parents happy innately. And when they don't make their parents happy, they quickly change up. Kids that are not attached don't quickly do that because they don't have the um, the relationship as the only agenda for good behavior. Not the only agenda, but the primary agenda.
So when a child misbehaves, is it a time to punish them? Or is it a time for attachment where you say, okay, what can we learn from this?
I think it's a teaching opportunity.
And how do we
I'm
go
not a big
about
fan.
teaching
I'm
them?
not a big fan of of punishment.
So how do we deal with that?
With
How
what?
does a biological parent has a little boy, little girl that says, you're a monkey butt and throws their cereal on the floor?
Mm-hmm.
Now they're learning attachment. Now you're trying to teach them that this displeases me, and it
I
makes.
don't think they're learning attachment. At that point, a child is probably already securing the attachment process. The attachment pendulum keeps going, but I just think at that point, if a parent reinforces the natural consequence of throwing your cereal, well, you have to bend over and clean up your cereal, and you can't eat your cereal, so it's all cleaned up and you have another bowl. So that's kind of like the natural consequence of throwing your cereal.
Okay.
The other natural consequence is If you're a kid who's going to be throwing food, well, you probably don't get to go to restaurants very often if you throw food around.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not so sure those are punishments. They're natural consequences of behavior.
Okay. Laurie, I want to remind people our phone number is 202-999-4699. It's on the screen. Please call in with any questions or comments. Laurie, along with what we're talking about, the misbehaved child, I'm kind of building up to really my question is with adopted kids, it's all about attachment. I realize that going through the whole process, it's all about attachment. When they throw things on the floor in
Well, George, can
defiance.
I just interrupt? Can I just interrupt you for a minute?
Yep.
You're bulking all of adopted children into one category. There are many adopted children out there that are healthy and attached.
Okay, fair enough. Because with the 9 children that I adopted, I guess the ones that cause issues are the ones that come to the top, and I didn't have issues with all the kids, not by a long shot. But with the ones that obviously are having attachment issues, which is kind of where my thoughts are. The ones that are having attachment issues and not wanting to attach, when they misbehave like that, then how do you handle that? Because now you really need to look at that as how do I attach to this child and learn from this bad behavior?
You mean to teach from the bad behavior, the
Yes.
negative behavior?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think you have to continue trying to stimulate attachment all the time with a kid who's having trouble and struggling with that process, and also teach at the same time, because you can't, you know, allow it. You can't do nothing when a child, hits you.
Mm-hmm.
Even you have to do something about taking care of or using that as a teaching opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
It's just more difficult when the child doesn't have the first priority of pleasing the parents.
But what is the
So I think,
child? Are they testing your limits? Are they rejecting your attachment when it's a troubled adopted child that's having obvious attachment issues?
they could be doing all of those things.
Okay.
It
Uh,
depends on the kid, the circumstance, and what's going on.
and next week, our show is going to be on the part of it will be on the 5-part apology, which a listener wrote in about and asked to learn more about it. It was going to come up anyways, so I just thought that I'd mention that that show is going to be next Tuesday. It's going to be part of it anyways. So, attachment is a natural thing. And if it's broken, does it become unnatural? Is it something that they can easily try to fix? Is it up to the parents to help the child fix it?
Of course, it's hard to attach without the attachment figure in tow.
Mm-hmm.
So when I do attachment therapy, I don't ever do it with a child alone, because I need the attachment figure right there in the room. So you can't attach to nothing. So of course the parent has to be actively involved in helping a child's um, helping a child's brain be wired for attachment.
Okay.
So, a child who has difficulty in that process is probably based in fear, because if you do attach to some risk of love comes a risk of another disruption, and that's really painful.
Mm-hmm. Laurie, everybody pretty much knows that the child's personality is developed by the age of 3. So if there's good attachment, whether it's a mother that's giving up the child for adoption, so it's an adopted child, birth child, either way, if everything's going really well, can damage happen after the age of 3 in terms of attachment?
I think relational trauma can happen at any age.
It can.
Sure.
What can happen with an
People
older
who get
child?
people well, people who get divorced have some relational trauma. If your
Mm-hmm.
spouse leaves you and it's not something that you wanted, that's a trauma, and it's based on the breakup of a relationship. That's relational trauma. So that disrupts an attachment process. So that can happen at any time in your life. And for many adopted kids, that happens many times over and over and over again, which is why they're not keen on doing it again.
Okay. How does the child use attachment skills as an adult?
By choosing good friends, choosing a good mate, um, being able to attach and do the process over again with their own children. So it's a lifelong process. It's skills that we have and we acquire and use throughout our lifespan. So I think people who have healthy attachment patterns have healthier and happier lives in the end.
Hmm. And Laurie, can adults strengthen their skills of attachment? Is it ever too late for such a thing?
No, it's never too late. Attachment's a lot about trust and safety. And so adults can work on being able to find safety and trust other individuals throughout their lifespan. So the attachment process can be worked on, into adulthood, their whole life.
Okay. Um, I want to invite callers again. I hope the phones are working. It's really impossible for me to know unless somebody calls in. And if they're trying to call in and it's not coming through, I have no way of knowing that unless somebody tells me. So if anybody's trying to call in, send a message to on the live talk show. There's a link for, I believe, I'm going to tell you in 1 second what it says. It says questions and/or comments, suggestions for show ideas, interested in being a featured guest. Send us your favorite quote. And big yellow rectangle with rounded corners says contact us. Let me know if you're trying to call in and it's not coming through because I have no way of knowing that. Also, along that, any questions that you have for Laurie anytime that you're seeing this show, whether it's a year from now, live, whatever it is, you can also text us your questions. I will make sure that they get addressed, just like the woman that asked about the 5-part apology. Certainly, I let her know when the show is coming up, and it's just a way for us to get information to people. Maybe it's something that's very specific to you. We'd love to help you with that. We like to think of ourselves as a community of helpers that are here to help any parents, whether adoption, foster, biological children, your natural birth family, whatever it is, we'd be happy to help. So please don't be afraid to call in. Our number is 202 999 4699, and no question or comment is ever too silly for us, I would think. So I'd be happy to hear from you. Maybe I'll learn one day that that could be the case. Laurie, I have a quote that I picked out. I'll read it to you. And by is watching a child go through something really tough and not being able to fix it for them. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's true. Yeah. I think that sometimes we feel our children's pain deeper than they feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't fix it. We can't protect them from life. I'm sorry, I'm snacking again. I'm eating Junior Mints.
Well, Laurie,
Sorry.
that's okay. Um, with this, what
Don't you
comes,
agree, George? When your kids have a heartache, don't you feel it 10 times over?
Laurie, it kills me. Even my kids
I
that
know.
falsely accused, when all that was going on, and to this day, I feel sorry for them because in their young foolishness of not understanding and not having good attachment, and we tried to fix it many times, many ways. It still broke my heart and was just painful to watch. And when they lost their parents and lost all their supports and everything else and had to change schools, that was hugely painful. Even to watch the child that started the false accusations, it was very tough to even there because you have the love for the child. No matter what a child does to you, people have to, well, not that they have to, but a good parent never forgets the love that they have for the child. I didn't see him do those um, events in terms of telling people these lies and doing all that. I just saw this little boy that came to me at 5 years old that I loved. taught him the five-part apology, thought he was doing so well, and then he made a mistake, and unfortunately, a mistake that cost a lot. That really hurt. And that's a child
Hmm.
that brought it on themselves. So when you see children go through things, it doesn't matter, in my book, what brought it on. It's very hard. And I think that this is actually the hardest part of being a parent.
And you know what, George? You're talking about a huge, huge adverse life experience. I think even the simplest things. So you remember when my daughter went to take her driver's license, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
took her the first time, and you took her the second time,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I took her the first time, and she failed, and it was horrible for both of us. She was devastated and crushed. I was devastated and crushed. It was just, and I think that I was just as crushed as she was. I felt the pain of it just as much as she did. And then the second time when she went again and you took her, I was happy that you were going to take her because I wasn't sure that I could manage that pain again if she failed.
It's true. It
So
doesn't
thank
matter
goodness
how
she.
big or small, it hurts to see your
No,
child.
and I know because I'm a rational. At most times, I'm a rational adult, so I knew it wasn't going to change, her life. But in that moment, it was horrible for both of us, and that's a regular life occurrence. And I couldn't protect her from that. I couldn't go in and beat up the driving guy, tester, and I couldn't change it for her. And it's horrible. That's a horrible, helpless feeling when your kid is suffering like that, and you feel the same way. And I mean, it was so hard for me that I much preferred to have you take her the second time, and so you got to enjoy watching her pass. And I missed out on that because I didn't want the pain of watching her fail again. So I think on simpler everyday life, we feel the pain that our children feel, and when we're attached to them, and they're attached to us, we feel each other's pain. That's sort of what attachment is, and empathy is you can actually feel somebody else's pain. And you'd notice that kids who are attached to their parents always can tell, when their parents are not feeling good, or when their parents are sad, or when their parents are feeling a certain way, or happy. Or kids are very cued into the emotions of their parents. It's just a reciprocal sharing. I think it's over the top at times when we are too invested in what's going on in our children's lives. But I think the normal process, we all feel our children's pain. The first breakup that a child has with a boyfriend or girlfriend, that's really hard to manage. It's because you can't change it. You can't take that pain away from your child, but you feel it sometimes as deeply as they do. It's awful.
Mm-hmm. Laurie,
So,
I have an
George,
amazing announcement to make.
there's a caller.
Uh, I guess that would be amazing if we could get them on there too. Maybe callers can call just to congratulate me because I just found out. Um, well, actually, it came on about five
Oh,
minutes ago at seven
your
twelve.
grandfather?
Well, listen, at 7:12 p.m., weighing 7.11 pounds, 20.5 inches long, full head of black hair, Sophia Haraz
Uh,
has been born. So she's here.
oh, oh, that's exciting. Oh, gosh. Can I hang up?
No, you can't hang up. That doesn't mean that you get to
I
go.
have a call to make.
Well, you can make your call later. Yeah, it's a very exciting time. I'm sure that Carlos is very excited, and it's so funny
Oh,
that I
my gosh,
should.
he must be over the moon.
My pink shirt made it happen finally. Oh my God, the poor thing. That
Probably.
was 27 hours of labor, the poor thing. Um,
Uh,
Lori, I have another quote that I brought up for you, and boy, is this one really timely at this point. It's once you bring kids into the world, it's not just about you anymore. And boy, does Carlos have a wake up with that one coming. So once you bring kids into the world, it's not just about you anymore. And by the way, I think he's doing great in terms of realizing that it's not about him. But what do you think about that quote?
well, I think it's true. I think that once you make the commitment to be a parent, it's about the safety and well-being of your child. The irony or the caveat, though, is that parents have to be really good at self-care in order to be the best parent that they can be. So, and I think many parents I know, I did, you take care of your child at all costs. So here's an example of that. So, I'm a family therapist and I specialize with children. And when I'm teaching other therapists, I tell them all the time if they learn and they learn well how to work with children, they'll never be out of work. And the reason for that is because parents will always take their children to therapy and they'll pay for it and they'll be committed to it because parents are very invested on making sure or doing whatever it takes to make their children well and to maximize happiness for their children. Yet parents oftentimes will not go to therapy or pay for therapy for themselves.
That's an interesting point.
So and so they're so, but it's true. And um, so therein lies the yes, it does become about the children, about our children, and our first priority is to our children. But if we're not taking care of ourselves, what good are we to our children? I know that when I'm doing a crappy job at taking care of myself, my kids notice that because they suffer. I'm not happy. I'm tired. I'm not eating well. All of those things, and they don't like that. And my kids are pretty verbal and open about telling me, "Listen, Mom, you got to do this, blah blah blah," because they recognize that. So I think that yes, the first priority is to take care of your children. It does become about the children, but you also have to make sure that you take care of yourself. And particularly if you're married, you know, children's happiness has a lot to do with their parents and their parents being happy. So if the parents are not taking care of their marriage, how good is that for their children?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a mixed bag. I do believe that, your children have to be obviously the first priority. However, you also have to make sure that you take care of yourself and your marriage and your other relationships so that you can provide good modeling for them.
I've kind of always believed that your first priority is yourself, and not in a selfish way, but to be connected with the universe, to God, whatever you want to call it, but just to be connected within yourself, to have good energy in yourself. That's your first priority. Then, when you look for a partner, you look for someone that's also in that same category as you are.
Mhm.
And then together, you come together, and your first priority is each other. But once you are together and you do have each other and you know that you're each other's backup and best friend and everything else, that's when together you start making your priorities. And if you have children, they become priority one.
Mhm.
That's my
Yeah.
belief. I don't know if that's technically correct, but it's just the way I see it. It seems logical, and I'm a very logical person.
Well, I
Lori,
think those, and yes,
oh no, go ahead. You think what?
I think that if you take care of your own happy as an adult, your children will be happy. My
Mm-hmm.
mother always says if you're well and happy, your kids will be well and happy because they're going to feed off of whatever you are in most circumstances. So if you're depressed and miserable, well, what is that going to make your kids? And it's really hard if you're not taking care of yourself. Being a parent is really difficult. We have to work and financially support our children, emotionally support our children, spiritually support our children. And that's really hard to do if you're not in a good place yourself. And it takes work.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Lori, what is something that people can do for their children in terms of attachment as a family? What are some exercises that people can do?
have meals together. Insist that, cell phones, um, get put away. I don't know, did I tell you that I had Ben and his kids over here Sunday for dinner?
I
George?
think you did, yes. Did you make
Okay, so
everyone
the
put their
kids,
phone away?
I made everybody put their phone away. There was no phones the entire afternoon and evening. We played cards around the table. We ate together. We talked. But if I didn't say that, they would have all had their phones out next to them, answering the phone or answering text or looking at Facebook or whatever. So, and they would have been distracted. So I didn't allow it, and my kids already know that, and I guess his kids know it too. So everybody just put their phone, and we enjoyed each other's company, and that's all part of that whole process. So that's what you can do. turn TVs off, take family vacations, um,
Do family
so all the
vacations
usual
have to
things.
be big? Do they have to be,
No,
hey, we're going to Europe, or can it be, hey, we're going to
no,
the park?
absolutely, either or.
One of my kids' favorite when they were younger was we'd bring them to the different elementary schools in town. I know that sounds like a silly thing, but we'd bring them to different elementary schools, and boy, did it open up conversations with them about which school had the best playground, which ones had the best playing fields. It brought up all kinds of things. If there were other kids playing there, it was kind of interesting because they'd interact with somebody new. I always thought that that was a great little weekend kind of a thing to do with the
Mhm,
kids.
mhm,
Really, I think almost anything is a good thing to do to attach with your family, and I think you brought up a really good point, especially if it's something that takes away their cell phones, takes away their computers, and takes those things out of the equation, so it's just time together.
mhm. So they're actually, um, being with you as opposed to sitting next to you.
Hmm.
Because sitting next to you is just geography. It's really not enjoying somebody's. It's like asking somebody to go on a first date and taking them to the movies. Know somebody like that?
Hmm. No, you don't.
No.
Well, Lori, I'm going to wrap up the show. Thank you very much for being here again tonight. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, George.
The next show that's going to be on will be tomorrow night with Carolyn Goodridge. She's a returning guest as well. The show is A New Baby. No, tonight's show was A New Baby with Laurie Landry. Let the attachment begin. Sorry about that.
George, can I hang up?
Yes, Laurie, you can hang up. Thank you again. Good night. And
I'm gonna hang up and call Carlos. Bye bye.
bye bye. And for everyone else, just to let you know, tomorrow night's show will be with Carolyn Goodridge, Adopting a Baby with Carolyn Goodridge, the foster adoption delivery. That's going to be a fairly important thing because tonight we're talking about attachment. Carolyn's going to bring us a different piece of it of when things go wrong, when things go right for the foster adoption delivery, and she'll have her take on it because that's a very important thing. We're learning here how important attachment is, and we're also learning how important it is to get it right, to even understand it. That's really the beginning of it, is an understanding of what is attachment. And then with foster and adoption, it's a whole special kind of a thing. It's not the same as biological. So she's going to go over that with us. I'm very excited about that. And to everyone, I just want to say goodnight. And to Sophie, I want to say welcome to the world. Um, um, couldn't be happier and more excited for Carlos because he's going to have a whole new experience in life, and it'll be very life changing for him. He'll be on Thursday, and I'm sure he'll have plenty to tell us about, and we look forward to that. Good night, everyone.